Hi, K-pop lovers. Welcome back to our channel. Before we start, if this kind of content speaks to you, please like this video right now, subscribe so you never miss a story like this, and hit that comment button below. Tell me, did you know any of this was happening behind the scenes? Let's go. They smile for you. They dance for you. They look absolutely flawless on that stage, under those lights, in those music videos. But what if I told you that behind many of those perfect bodies, behind those synchronized performances that millions of fans worship, some of the biggest names in K-pop were literally starving. Passing out in practice rooms. Crying alone after secretly eating a single piece of rice cake. And being told, by the very people who were supposed to protect them, to keep going anyway. This is not a rumor. This is not a fan theory. These are real stories, told in real interviews, in real documentaries. And today, we are going to talk about all of it. Welcome. And I need you to stay with me until the end, because the last story I'm going to tell you might be the one that changes how you see the K-pop industry forever. Trust me, you do not want to miss it. Let's start with a formula. Not a dance formula. Not a music formula. An actual mathematical formula that has quietly haunted female K-pop idols for decades. It's called the height minus 120 rule. What that means is simple and devastating. A female idol's ideal body weight, in kilograms, is calculated by taking her height in centimeters and subtracting 120. So if you are 165 centimeters tall, you are expected to weigh 45 kilograms. For reference, most medical standards would classify that as dangerously underweight for that height. And yet, for years, this calculation was treated inside K-pop agencies as if it were as normal as a rehearsal schedule. Soyou, the former member of the beloved girl group SISTAR, revealed in the SBS documentary, Bodymentary, which aired in December 2024, that this kind of pressure was constant and suffocating during her trainee days. She described being weighed every single day, being judged without mercy, and living in a state of constant anxiety about the number on that scale. And then one day, it caught up with her. She collapsed on a public street from sudden weight loss. She was rushed to the emergency room. Even after receiving intravenous fluids, she said the anxiety about gaining weight didn't stop, it pushed her further into panic disorder. She described the beauty standards of that era as an inescapable part of being an idol. But here is what makes her story even more painful. She also confessed that she once secretly ate a single black sesame rice cake, and the guilt hit her so hard that she forced herself to vomit. That single moment, she said, was the beginning of her battle with anorexia and depression. One piece of rice cake. That's all it took to send her spiraling. Now I want to tell you about a story that, once you hear it, you will never forget. This is the story of Twice's Momo, one of the most documented and verified cases of extreme dieting in K-pop history. Before her debut with Twice under JYP Entertainment, Momo was called in and given an ultimatum. She was told that she needed to lose 7 kilograms, that's roughly 15 pounds, in just 1 week. And if she failed, she would not be allowed to debut. She would not be allowed to stand on that stage with her group members. Everything she had worked for, gone. What Momo did next is something that no person, let alone a teenager, should ever have to do. She stopped eating. Completely. For an entire week, she went to the gym every single day and consumed almost nothing except ice cubes. And she was so afraid that even the ice cubes might cause her body to retain water and add weight, that she would sometimes spit them out before they fully melted. She was training intensely, burning enormous amounts of energy, and taking in virtually nothing. The physical toll was catastrophic. She became so severely dehydrated that she was terrified to fall asleep at night, because she was genuinely afraid that she might not wake up. Her fellow Twice members watched her grow paler and paler and said they were scared she would faint at any moment. At the end of that week, Momo had not yet hit her target. And rather than stopping the madness, her agency extended the deadline by 3 more days. 3 more days of starvation. 3 more days of fear. And then, finally, she made it. She debuted. She became one of the most beloved dancers in K-pop history. But the story of how she got there? That is not a success story. That is a warning. Stay with me. Because I promised you shocking stories, and we are just getting started. Let's talk about Seungyeon of Kara, one of the most iconic girl groups of the early 2010s. In that same SBS Bodymentary documentary from December 2024, she opened up about what happened to her body during promotions for Kara's massive hit song, Mr. If you remember that song, you remember the iconic hip choreography, the low-rise pants, the crop tops. What you didn't see was what was happening off stage. Seungyeon revealed that during that promotional period, she barely drank water for months. Not ate less, barely drank water. 4 months. The result was that she became so dangerously thin that she fainted. And the damage that extreme dehydration and weight loss caused her body was not just temporary. She developed a rash of unknown origin that took 7 years to heal. 7 years. She also developed patulous eustachian tube syndrome, a rare medical condition caused by excessive weight loss that impairs the body's ability to regulate ear pressure. That is a condition that affects your ability to hear, to communicate, to perform. For a singer and performer, that is a devastating consequence. And it all started because she was pressured to be thinner. Now let's talk about HyunA. If you are a K-pop fan, you know HyunA. She is one of the most iconic solo artists in the history of this industry, bold, powerful, electric on stage. But there was a period of her career where she was living on 1 piece of gimbap a day. 1 small roll of rice and filling. That was it. HyunA herself revealed on Rain's YouTube show, Season B Season, that at the height of her career, she weighed just 40 kilograms. She said her health began collapsing when she was around 26 years old. The consequence of that near-starvation diet was a condition called vasovagal syncope, a medical term for a specific type of fainting caused when the body's blood pressure drops dangerously low, usually triggered by dehydration or extreme physical stress. HyunA fainted repeatedly during music video shoots and performances. Her management team became so alarmed that they assigned dedicated staff members specifically to watch her at all times and developed silent cues to signal to each other when she appeared on the verge of collapse. Her former manager confirmed this publicly on MBC's The Manager, saying that HyunA fainted many times while dieting. Since then, HyunA has gained approximately 8 kilograms and has spoken openly about how much happier and healthier she now feels. But the years of damage to her body, those cannot be undone. Are you still with me? Good. Because I need to talk about BTS's Jimin now, and this one is going to hit different if you're an ARMY. During the Blood, Sweat and Tears era in 2016, Jimin became extremely self-conscious about his naturally full cheeks. He decided to go on a diet. And when Jimin decides to do something, he goes all in. What he did was eat 1 small meal over the course of 10 days. Not 1 meal a day. 1 meal across 10 entire days. He was simultaneously rehearsing complex choreography, filming music videos, and attending promotional schedules, all while running on almost nothing. The result was that he started collapsing during rehearsals. Passing out. His fellow BTS members grew deeply concerned and repeatedly asked him to come eat with them. He refused. He kept going. Years later, Jimin opened up about this on the Korean variety show, Please Take Care of My Refrigerator, and later in the documentary, Break the Silence. He said the extreme diet did not even work the way he hoped, and that it was absolutely not worth the physical toll it took on his body. And this is the point in our story where I need to ask you something that I think you already know the answer to, but that nobody talks about loudly enough. Why is this happening? Why are these incredibly talented, incredibly hardworking human beings being pushed to the edge of medical crisis just to maintain a certain size? The answer is a system. A deeply embedded, industry-wide system that ties physical appearance so tightly to commercial value that it becomes, in the minds of the people running it, more important than the health of the person they are managing. Trainee contracts, sometimes signed when these artists are as young as 10 or 11 years old, give agencies extraordinary control over nearly every aspect of an idol's life. What they eat, how much they weigh, what they wear. These contracts have been called slave contracts by critics, and while the Korean Fair Trade Commission has pushed for reforms over the years, the cultural pressure on idols' bodies has proven far more difficult to legislate away than the contracts themselves. There is also a number that we need to confront. According to the National Health Insurance Service of South Korea, anorexia cases among women under the age of 20 increased by 97.5% between 2018 and 2022. Nearly doubled in 4 years. And while K-pop is certainly not the only factor driving that statistic, researchers studying the Hallyu wave, the global spread of Korean pop culture, have found consistent links between exposure to K-pop idol body standards and increased rates of body dissatisfaction, disordered eating, and dangerous dieting behaviors among fans worldwide. A 2024 study found that over 2/3 of young female K-pop fans reported comparing their bodies to their favorite idols, and many showed signs of disordered eating habits as a result. Now I want to tell you about something that happened very recently, because this story is not over. In December 2024, South Korean broadcaster SBS aired a documentary called Bodymentary. It was the first time a major Korean television network had directly confronted the K-pop industry's obsession with idol body image in such an unflinching, honest way. 5 prominent female artists, Kim Won-sun, Soyou, Han Seungyeon, Jun Hyo-sung, and Hwasa of MAMAMOO, agreed to tell their stories publicly on national television. The documentary took 10 months to produce. And notably, not a single current fourth-generation idol, those who debuted after 2020, agreed to participate. Think about what that means. The industry's newest generation of stars are still too afraid to speak. Hwasa, one of the most outspoken and fearless personalities in K-pop, shared a moment that broke a lot of hearts. She described secretly eating a piece of black sesame rice cake while dieting. Just one piece. And the guilt and self-loathing that followed was so intense that she cried and forced herself to vomit. She said this was how her anorexia began. Hwasa, the same Hwasa who has built a career on projecting absolute confidence and body positivity on stage, was secretly purging because she ate one piece of rice cake. The gap between the image and the reality could not be wider. So where do we go from here? There are signs of change, slow, imperfect, but real. Some agencies are now working with certified nutritionists. Some idols are speaking more openly about mental health and food. HyunA, Momo, Jimin, they have all said publicly that they no longer diet the way they once did, and that health is now their priority. The conversation is happening more than it ever has before. But the industry's appetite for a certain kind of body, thin, controlled, visually flawless, has not fundamentally changed. New trainees are still being weighed. New idols are still being told, directly or indirectly, that their worth is tied to a number on a scale. And a new generation of fans is watching, comparing, absorbing those standards into their own sense of self. The people we've talked about today, Momo, Soyou, Han Seungyeon, HyunA, Jimin, Hwasa, and so many others whose names we haven't even mentioned, they are not cautionary tales. They are real human beings who were put through something genuinely harmful in pursuit of an industry-manufactured ideal. They deserved better. And the next generation of K-pop artists, the trainees practicing right now in studios in Seoul, some of whom are barely teenagers, they deserve better too. The least we can do, as fans who love this music and this art, is see the full picture. Not just the performance. Not just the highlight reel. But the full, complicated, human truth behind it. If this video made you think, if it surprised you, if it made you feel something, please hit that like button right now. It genuinely helps this channel reach more people who need to hear this story. Subscribe if you haven't already. We cover K-pop stories that go deeper than the surface, the stories that matter. Drop a comment below. Which story in this video shocked you the most? Was it Momo? HyunA? The Bodymentary documentary? Tell me, I read every single one. Share this video with a K-pop fan who deserves to know the full truth. And I will see you in the next one. Annyeong.